Before we start, real quick, if you like stories where experience still matters, where quiet intelligence beats loud arrogance, and where people learn too late not to underestimate the wrong person, go ahead and subscribe. This story isn't about anger. It's about patience. My name is Nathan Brooks. And the moment Trevor Ashford didn't shake my hand, I knew I was screwed, not fired yet, not officially, but finished. You don't spend 32 years reading rooms without learning what silence means. Trevor sat across from me in the glass conference room. 32 years old, Stanford MBA, hair perfect, tie flawless, posture rehearsed. The kind of man who'd never spilled coffee on a keyboard at 3 in the morning while a Navy system screamed for a fix. He didn't look nervous, didn't look angry. He looked bored, like I was already gone, and he was just completing the paperwork. I'm 58. I gave Ironwall Technologies 32 years of my life. I joined when the company operated out of a converted warehouse, when defense contractors were run by ex-military people who still believed the mission mattered. Back then, we didn't talk about roadmaps or digital transformation. We talked about keeping people alive. I built the quantum encryption framework that kept Navy communications secure from Norfolk to the Persian Gulf, not theoretical systems, real ones. The kind that can't fail because failure has consequences. Trevor adjusted his tie, a small movement, but deliberate point $200, maybe more. Then he opened my personnel file like it was a takeout menu. Look, Nathan, he said, you've contributed solid work over the years. Really solid. Solid, not irreplaceable, not foundational, just solid. I waited. In the Navy, you learn not to interrupt when someone is revealing who they really are. But we're pivoting toward AI-first solutions, he continued. And frankly, your analog approach doesn't align with our digital transformation roadmap. Analog. The word echoed in my head longer than it should have. I'd been writing quantum encryption algorithms before this kid hit puberty. I debugged systems while artillery training shook the building. But sure, I was analog. He smiled then, not a friendly smile, a corporate one, the kind that never reaches the eyes. The company's moving in a new direction, he said. Then he gestured toward the door, casual, polite, final, like he was showing me to the restroom after a long lunch. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't about technology. This wasn't about innovation. This was what happens when the founder's son gets handed the CEO chair straight out of business school. Trevor had never written a line of code, never pulled an all-nighter while a defense system failed under load, never missed Christmas dinner because a server farm crashed during a live operation. But he had an MBA and daddy's blessing, apparently, that outweighed 3 decades of experience. I didn't raise my voice, that didn't argue. The Navy teaches you something early. Panic wastes time. That I felt that familiar calm settle in. The same calm I felt when incoming intel suggested we were about to get HIT and O emotion. Just assessment. I glanced around my office. The team photos sat on my desk. Half those engineers? I'd hired them myself, trained them, stayed late with them through impossible Pentagon deadlines. We'd lived on vending machine coffee and stubborn determination. I closed my laptop. No speeches. No defending myself to someone who wouldn't understand value anyway. I stood up, tucked the termination folder under my arm, and walked out, past my team, pretending to work while watching everything unfold in the reflection of their monitors. Past HR, the same woman who used to ask me to mentor new hires. Nobody said a word. And that silence told me Ironwall wasn't the company I'd built anymore. But here's what people like Trevor never understand about guys like me. Sometimes walking away quietly isn't surrender, but it's positioning that I didn't go home right away. That's a habit you build after years in defense. Work. You never move straight from impact to comfort. You pause. You think. You let the situation settle. I stopped at Murphy's Diner. Same place I've been going to for over 20 years. Red vinyl booths. Coffee strong enough to wake the dead. No Wi-Fi. Which I liked that I sat there for a long time without touching the menu. Not angry. Not plotting revenge. Just thinking. Iron Wall up in my adult life. I joined when we were small. Scrappy. Still figuring things out. Back then, defense contractors were run by people who understood consequences that we weren't chasing buzzwords. We were solving problems that didn't forgive mistakes. I'd watched Iron Wall grow from 20 people into a billion-dollar Pentagon favorite. And the foundation of it all, the quantum encryption protocols running half the Navy's secure communications. That was my work that I paid Murphy in cash. Another old habit, and walked a couple blocks to clear my head. Then I caught a cab home. Not an Uber. A real cab. The kind I used to take when Iron Wall couldn't afford parking and I had to walk 6 blocks in the rain. Home smelled like leather and dog food. Rex looked up from his bed when I came in. Dogs know when something's changed before you do. I set the termination folder on the kitchen table. Poured 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff. And opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. That's when things shifted. Buried under old tax returns and warranty papers was a manila envelope, in O label. No writing, just wait, old habits, and Navy-trained paranoia. Inside, the original patent application, Y name at the top. Not Iron Wall's, mine. Filed October 2009 during one of the company's funding crises when legal was too busy keeping the lights on to track intellectual property. That wasn't an accident. Back then, my buddy Rick Porter had pulled me aside over beers. Rick, former Navy cryptographer turned IP attorney, he'd said, "Nate, file it under your name first. You can assign it later when things stabilize." They never stabilized. They just got profitable, and they never circled back. What Iron Wall didn't realize, what Trevor couldn't possibly understand, was that lawyers draft temporary agreements with expiration dates, and if nobody renews them, things revert. Rick had buried a clause deep in the provisional filing. Not dramatic, not aggressive, just precise that in the event of involuntary termination without cause, reversion of rights within 5 business days. Iron Wall had been using my framework for 15 years. Licensing paperwork kept rolling forward because nobody thought I'd ever leave, that I was the reliable one, the foundation guy. Well, that assumption was their first mistake that I didn't celebrate, that didn't smile, that I assessed. Phone started buzzing, Slack messages, sympathy texts, the usual corporate funeral language. "Sorry to hear, Nate. Let's stay in touch." HR even sent an exit survey that I didn't respond. Let them wonder. That's when the twist fully settled in. They didn't fire me thinking I was dangerous. They fired me thinking I was safe, predictable, quiet. Done. That's the mistake companies make when they confuse silence for weakness. That I opened the closet I hadn't touched in over a decade. Top shelf that a banker's box labeled original IP. Personally sat on the floor going through brittle printouts and old notebooks, and why handwriting from 2009 looked like it belonged to a different man. Then I found it, another sealed envelope, notary stamp intact, patent filed under my name, still clean, still valid, still lethal. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was leverage.I. Scanned the document, opened an encrypted email, and sent Rick a single line, "Need confirmation. Clause still active." Then I waited, because when you've spent decades building systems that can't fail, you learn something important. You don't rush the move. You make sure the ground is solid before you step. Rick called Tuesday morning, 0630 sharp. Lawyers keep Navy hours when something matters that I picked up on the first ring. Clause still active? I asked. Papers shuffled on his end. He didn't answer right away. Rick was methodical. Always had been. Finally, yes, he said. If they terminated you Monday. Reversion triggers by Friday into business. Then he paused. But Nate, that patent isn't a side feature. I already knew. That's their entire encryption backbone. Rick continued. Patent 10234578 is about to revert to you automatically. I didn't say anything. Silence does work on lawyers too. You understand what that means, Rick said. I do. Once the call ended, I didn't celebrate that I logged in. The USPTO filing system hadn't changed much over the years. Same structure. Same sterile language. Rick and I had drafted the reversion notice back in 2009 that he'd said then, "You'll probably never need this." I opened the encrypted folder, checked the fields, verified the timestamps in O-drama. Just a checkbox next to involuntary termination without cause. Click, submit. That was IT and alerts. No sirens, just confirmation text and a digital timestamp. Ownership would slide back to me by Friday at 1,700 hours. Ironwall's crown jewel was now on a clock. Meanwhile, inside Ironwall, they were still operating like nothing had changed. Product strategy meetings, roadmap slides, AI-first buzzwords. Every single feature they discussed ran on the same encryption core I'd written years earlier. Not one person checked the USPTO filings. Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Paul Richardson from development. Nate, quick heads up, he said. We're moving your old code into the new build. Pentagon demo got moved up to Monday. I thanked him and ended the call. They were building on land they didn't own. Friday, 1,700 hours exactly. The confirmation email arrived. Patent reverted. Clean. Final. Unless Ironwall had somehow rebuilt their encryption architecture in 5 days, which they hadn't, every line of code in their next-gen system was now infringement. But Ironwall didn't know that yet. They were too busy preparing for the Pentagon demo, glossy brochures, marketing decks, language like proprietary technology and patent-protected architecture. Monday morning arrived with perfect timing. And it wasn't Ironwall's people who found the problem first. At IT was an intern, some kid in legal assigned to routine monitoring, scrolling patent databases, checking competitor filings, and then my name appeared. Owner, Nathan Brooks, effective date. Friday, 1,700 hours, he flagged it. Sent it up the chain. Legal froze. They dug through old agreements. Found a clause. The one everyone forgot about. The one nobody thought mattered. The memo went out 0.4 pages to worst-case exposure. Final line. Recommendation. Postpone demo until IP ownership clarified. Trevor laughed when legal brought it to him. Called it a clerical error. Told them to keep it quiet until after the demo. That decision was the second mistake. Why now? Multiple people inside Ironwall knew something was wrong, but no one wanted to be the one to stop the train at they let it roll. Pentagon. Demo day arrived. Conference room polished. LED wall ready. Next gen is now. Trevor walked on stage like nothing could touch him. 15 minutes in. Legal stepped up. Quiet. Controlled. We can't demo this system. Mike still live. What are you talking about? Trevor whispered. We don't own the patent anymore. That was when the room changed. Documents began circulating. USPTO printouts, plain language, public record that a Pentagon official stood. This patent lists Nathan Brooks as owner. No one looked at Trevor anymore. They were reading, connecting dots, realizing what had just happened. The demo collapsed without a single raised voice. No applause, just movement, people leaving, careers recalculating to be why the time Trevor tried to recover, it was already over, and I wasn't even in the room that I woke up the next morning to silence. The kind that only shows up after something breaks in a way that can't be fixed. Rex was still asleep. That MY phone wasn't. Missed calls. Voicemails. Messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Ironwall Legal. Twice. Paul from Development. One word. Unbelievable. And then a number I recognized immediately. Colonel James Cross. Retired. The founder's husband. He hadn't called me in almost a decade. That I let it ring twice. Then picked up. Nate, he said. No greeting. No warm-up. I just got an alert from the USPTO. I waited. Patent 10234578 lists you as the owner. Yes. That can't be right, he said. You assigned it to Ironwall. No, Irapia. We never finalized the transfer. Silence that I could hear him putting the pieces together. That system, he said, is our core encryption. I know. Then the question came. Why now? I didn't rush the answer. Because your people terminated me without cause, I said. And the clause we wrote 15 years ago just activated. That was enough. He didn't argue, that he didn't threaten, that he hung up point 20 minutes later. People started texting. James had walked into Ironwall HQ without an appointment. Straight to legal. Then to Trevor. Doors closed. Voices raised. By mid-morning. The board knew by noon. Investors knew by early afternoon. Ironwall's legal team was in full damage control that I didn't take any more calls. Instead, I drafted an email. Subject line, Terminus no legal theater. No emotion, just bullet points. Full licensing agreement for continued use of patent hashtag 10, 234, 578, $22 million upfront payment, 15% ongoing royalties, interim CTO role with board voting rights, public acknowledgement of original authorship, Trevor Ashford's immediate resignation. I ended it with one sentence. This is not revenge. This is realignment. Then I hit send point 4 hours past and counteroffer, negotiation. Every term accepted. All of them that I leaned back in my chair, Rex at my feet, and watched the street outside my window, somewhere across town. Trevor was packing up his office, learning the lesson business schools don't teach. You don't fire the architect unless you own the blueprints, and the blueprints have my name on them the whole time. The next day, Ironwall made announcements, leadership changes, strategic restructuring. A week later, the company rebranded. Brooks Cross Technologies. Funny how names come back when they're legally required. I returned to the building not as an employee, but as CTO and patent holder. Same hallways. Different power. Every new hire now hears a story during onboarding about experience, about respect, about not confusing silence with weakness. Rex got an office too. Corner spot. Best therapy dog in the defense industry. People call what happened revenge, that I call it correction. Because when you spend 32 years building something, you don't disappear quietly. You make sure everyone remembers who actually built it. And sometimes, the best weapon is the one nobody sees coming. I'd been carrying mine for 15 years. Trevor just happened to be stupid enough to activate it.